This is my first video that's talking at length, so if I get a bit boring, well actually it's not my first video that's talking at length, because I did a few that were dead boring because I just spoke for ages about a wireless pack. Well, it should be a bit more interesting if you like amps in gear. So we're going to talk about the 4 cable method. Basically it's called the 4 cable method because you use 4 jack leads. The first one is the one that goes from your guitar into the guitar in on the pedal. The second one, going in the order how we use them, is the one that goes from the effects end and it goes into the front of your amp. Then the next one would be from the effects end of the amp to the effects return on the HD500, and then the actual output of the HD500 goes back into the effects return on the amp. Right, that's how you set it up. Basically what it means is signal comes in here, it's then affected by whatever is in front of the effects loop block. I don't know if you can see it very well there, but the effects loop block is the one just above my finger with the arrow above it, and in front of that I've got a tube screamer at the minute. So the signal comes in, it gets tube screamed, and then it gets sent out of the effects end into the front of your amp, which is where you can use it as you would normally amp. You change the EQ, your gain, etc. There you can see my boxes, look, and then it comes back into this through the effects return on the effects end of the amp, and then anything that's after the effects loop block. So on here, it's not focusing very well, but you have to trust me, on here, after the effects loop block, there you can see it now, I've got my delays and reverbs. And then once it's been delayed and reverbed, it comes out of the A pedal into the effects return on the amp, into the amp's power amp. That should be the same on every amp, as long as it's got a 100% parallel mix or a series effects loop. Now this is where it can get interesting. Say if you've got an amp like a Marshall DSL or a 6505, where the master volume is controlled before it reaches the power amp is always on full blast. So if you go straight into the power amp, which you are doing through the effects loop return and the main out of the pod, you will get full whack volume. So what you have to do is turn down the actual pedal master if you want to turn down the sound when the effects loop block is turned off. The reason you turn the effects loop block off is if you've got your amp on a dirty sound and you want clean, you can set up one patch on the pod using the 4 cable method with the effects loop block on and using the dirty sound of your amp. And if you set up another patch which turns the effects loop off and still leave your amp on a dirty sound, you will only get the clean sound coming from, or whatever model you set from the pod. So I'd set it as a Vox or something like that model, so you get a nice clean, all while your amp is still dirty. And that saves you changing channel and changing effects, and that you can do it all in one press, which is why you'd have to change the master volume if you just wanted to do that, because your amp would be going crazy loud. But the issue is that only really works well if you just want to use that one patch with that model on. You change the master. If you wanted to do it where you did have a dirty sound on and you wanted the dirty sound to be at the volume set on the amp, you have to leave the master on full, and then you'd have to set it up each time you play a gig or each time you practice and get the volume levels correct and set up the actual amp model volume and drive to get a level that's balanced. Otherwise your dirty sound would be as loud as your amp where you've set the volumes, and then your clean sound would be full power, blow your head off loud if you master it, if you're at full volume. Now I've took it a step further with mine, and I've got a Midi switcher for my amp. So before I was using the effects loop block on and off trick to get different sounds when only turn one pedal. Now I've set it so as I change through my sounds, it changes the channels on my amp. I'll quickly do it so you can see. If you can see just on my channel volumes, you should be able to see I'll zoom in for you. You can see the channels changing, and then you can see my controller box. If I go quickly from clean to solo, you can see all the lights lighting up. So what happens with that is when you press one of these buttons, I've got mine set A, B, C, D instead of having foot switch FS1 to FS8. When I press FS5, which is technically patch 1A, it will send a MIDI program change out of the MIDI cable into the MIDI box, which will then change whatever you've told it to change. So I've told it not to put anything on. When one of these lights up, it changes a function on the amp. So say for instance 1, that changes between channel 1 and 2 of my amp, and 2 changes between the low gain and high gain option for channel 1 or 2. 3's not doing anything. 4 is a master volume, A and B, because I've got 2 master volumes, and 5 is my mid focus, which I always have on. So as I change through, it sends that, you tell it what it needs to be, then you press and hold right, and it'll save what options you told it for that program change. Now you can also send continuous controller changes, which I've set up for my my master, which is this one, and you can see that no matter what program I'm in, number 4, which is my master control, is off, because I always use master A. And then what I do is, if I want to mute, I have master B as mute. So as I change through there, you can see between master A and B it's not changing. But on any of my patches, say for instance if I go to my distortion channel, you can see number 1's lit up because it's for channel 2 and my mid. If I press my master volume switch, number 4 lights up and it changes between A and B. Now if I go back to say my clean sound, it changes back to A because it remembers I only want master A. So I only ever use my master B for a mute. Well, that can be used through any of the patches. It doesn't matter what you've set that to there. As long as you press that button, whatever patch it's in, it will change the master, and that'll work for any amp. It's got these functions. Oh yeah, if you've got a wah pedal, I've tried it loads of different ways around. Always put the wah at the very start of your signal chain. So as you can see, I've got my G30 under there. Today I'm using a cable, but signal normally goes into my G30, then it goes into my wah, and out of my wah into the main input of the HD500. I used to use it so that I sent my signal straight to my HD500, and then before plugging the cable into the front of my amp, it used to go into my wah pedal and then into the front of my amp. So I always thought, well, when you have a normal setup, your wah pedal is in front of your amp before the preamp. But I don't know whether it's because of buffered cable signal or I don't know. It sounds rubbish. It just sounds dead fizzy and it doesn't affect the tone as it would. But at the start, because it hasn't got to one of the digital buffers inside the HD500, well that's my theory anyway, it sounds just like a normal wah and it sounds fantastic. 2 other things to mention. On the back of the HD500 there's a switch for stomp and line level for effects return, or effects loop. Have it on stomp, that'll make it so it's just treating it as like a stomp. If you turn it onto line, it gets I can't remember whether it gets louder or quieter. There's a decibel difference anyway, and it doesn't sound as good. It either clips or it gets too quiet. I can't remember. I'm not going to change it now. And then just there, you've got your 1/4 inch out, which is this one, which goes to effects loop return. I found that it'll work on amp or line. If you turn it up to line, it boosts the signal, it makes it really loud, and it can cause your amp to clip sometimes. And if it's on amp, it's just a bit quieter. And when I've done A/B tests, having it on amp is the closest level to as if you weren't using the 4K method. If you didn't have any pedals at all, you're just plugged into your amp. So if you want a bit of a boost, use line, but I'd recommend using amp every time, really. Not really much else to show you. No, that's it. There's nothing else to show you. I'll a bish.